Hello. I want to say something about assisted dying, which is a topic we've been talking about in church and in the community quite a bit recently, not least because there's been a bill introduced to Parliament to introduce legislation to permit assisted dying in certain circumstances. There has been a few questions put to me about what does the Church of England say about assisted dying, what should we think as the church about assisted dying, and as usual my response is the Church of England does not have an official position on assisted dying. Various people have spoken about it. The Archbishop of Canterbury has spoken about it in a personal capacity. He is very much against the bill that's been introduced to Parliament, but there is no one position. And I think what I want to say in particular about assisted dying is that, um, as with many other ethical issues, we really mustn't resort to proof texts or easy answers, because this is not an easy topic. And it's a topic that, as with others that we've been discussing in church, leaves people emotionally connected to the subject, personally connected to the subject. Um, and that's no bad thing, because God works through these relationships. The kingdom is lived through these decisions that we make, these relationships that we have, and the love that we have for ourselves and for one another. When we talk about assisted dying, we mean a whole collection of ideas, including euthanasia, assisted suicide, physician assisted suicide. And in terms of the bill that's been introduced to Parliament, it really isn't clear what that might involve. We are very grateful to Nick Timothy, MP for West Suffolk, who hosted a discussion about the assisted dying bill in church. And he was very clear that we really know very little about what the bill will contain. And that really is one of the biggest problems with the bill as it has been presented, that there's been very little scope for discussion, either in Parliament or with other community partners. And so as a church and as a community, I really do want to encourage us to be able to talk about death, dying, and in particular assisted dying freely and openly, because I think that is necessary for the idea of assisted dying to be introduced into society, if that is what is going to happen. I think as a society, we need to be emotionally aware of how this debate makes us feel. What are the pressures to think certain things or act in certain ways that come, and they do, from various angles. So different religious ideas, spiritual ideas will come into play, but so will other political ideas or economic ideas. And I think one of the things that concerns me at the moment is that as a society we don't have a stable, a sustainable way of supporting those at the end of their life, which would give people a real choice about assisted dying. So our hospice service is severely underfunded. People don't get the palliative care they need in hospital or in the community either. Most people towards the end of their life, that process clinically is still overseen by the GP, and that, as we know, means that we don't always have as much direct supervision through that stage of life as we might wish for or benefit from. And those caring for those at the end of their life don't get the support that they need. And so what I would encourage us is to be able to talk about assisted dying, and to talk about what death and dying really means for us, without feeling the pressure to think one thing or another. In particular, I really don't want people towards the end of their life to be thinking, am I a burden on family, friends, or on the wider society? Or should I give up my life so that somebody else, somebody younger or somebody fitter, can benefit from hospital services, clinical services, more than me? that shouldn't really be part of the debate. What should be part of the debate is what is my life and my relationship worth, knowing that I am a child of God, ransomed by God, by Jesus Christ, and this gift of life is His to celebrate and to share. Having said that, people are very quick to turn to biblical texts, and as I said, we should be very aware of not resorting to proof texts to prove one thing or another. But people resort to things like "You shall not kill" in the Ten Commandments, as given first in Exodus, um, and yet the Old Testament contains plenty of other examples when the death penalty is given for particular circumstances of misjustice. What does Jesus say about that? Well, he says, you've heard it said, you shall not murder. I say to you, anyone who is angry with a brother or sister has already harmed, damaged that relationship irreparably with them. And so he encourages us to have forgiveness instead. So I don't think it's as easy as just saying you shall not kill, because at other parts of the Bible, the texts deal with that idea in very different ways. Equally, I would go to a text like Job 1, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away, blessed be the name of the Lord, a reminder that life is a gift. And I do think we should think of life as that. So what does it mean for us in that context then to think about giving up our life, giving over our life when we're nearing the end of it? Equally, people turn to other ideas and say, well, God wouldn't want us to suffer unnecessarily. And that too, I think, is absolutely true. Equally, I think God gives us the gifts of medicine, of knowledge, of science, of knowing how our bodies work and what is going to happen to them. And just as we can prolong our life through the wonder of medical science, just so perhaps we need to use those gifts wisely as people near the end of their life. So as it stands, I don't think I could support a bill to introduce assisted dying, because I don't think as a community we are emotionally literate enough or aware enough to be able to have those conversations honestly about what death and dying and the hope of eternal life means to us. We just don't have those conversations as a society. But do I think the idea of assisted dying in any form is completely wrong? Well, no, I don't think I could say that either. And perhaps if it was introduced in another form, I could encourage others to support the bill. As Nick Timothy said, we don't know what form the bill will take, but I do think with him that it is wrong that our debate should be focused on a private member's bill, which will have no more than 5 hours discussion in Parliament. And I fervently hope and pray that whether that bill, in whatever form it takes, passes or not, there will be sufficient time given for dialogue, discussion, debate in Parliament and with the wider community, with expert clinical voices, with spiritual voices too, to remind us that these decisions we take are not taken alone, but our death has a much wider effect on those close to us and the wider society, just as our life does. Because in life and in death, we witness to this wonderful gift that God has given us in creation, to be made in His image and to have the rational capacity to make decisions based on that gift of knowledge and discernment that He has given to us in the Spirit. So please do pray for all those involved in discussing the potential for legalizing assisted dying, and for those who work in a clinical setting, in a spiritual and religious setting, in a community setting, supporting the dying, those faced with diagnoses of terminal illness, and those who care for them. that God may bless us and allow us to recognize the fullness of life which his gospel brings to us.